The snow fell softly outside the big white house on Maple Street in Phoenix, Arizona. It was December 24, 2019, and the Henderson family seemed to have everything anyone could want. Their house sat in one of the best neighborhoods in town, with a perfect green lawn and Christmas lights that sparkled like jewels in the dark. Michael Henderson stood 6 feet tall with brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the sides. At 42 years old, he owned his own insurance company and drove a shiny black BMW. His neighbors knew him as the man who always waved hello and never forgot to bring in their trash cans when they were out of town. Michael had grown up poor, and he worked hard to give his family the life he never had as a child. His wife, Rebecca, was 38 years old with blonde hair and blue eyes. She had been a teacher before their children were born, but she quit her job to stay home and take care of their family. Rebecca loved to plan parties and make everything perfect. She spent hours decorating their house for each holiday and making sure their children had the best of everything. The Henderson family had 3 children who were the center of their world. Emma was 16 years old and the star of her high school drama club. She had long brown hair like her father and dreamed of becoming an actress one day. Tyler was 14 and loved playing basketball. He was tall for his age and had his mother's blue eyes. The youngest was Sophie, who had just turned 8 years old. Sophie was the family's little princess with curly blonde hair and a smile that could light up any room. From the outside, the Hendersons looked like the perfect American family. Their Christmas card that year showed all 5 of them standing in front of their fireplace wearing matching red sweaters and big smiles. Rebecca had sent the cards to over 200 people, including everyone from their church, their children's teachers, and all of Michael's business contacts. Every year, the Henderson family followed the same Christmas traditions. On Christmas Eve morning, they would go to church together. Then they would come home and Rebecca would make her famous hot chocolate while the children helped Michael set up the nativity scene on the mantle. In the afternoon, they would drive around town, looking at Christmas lights. At night, each child could open one present before going to bed. On Christmas morning, the family would gather around their huge Christmas tree in the living room. Michael would make his special Christmas breakfast of pancakes and bacon. Rebecca would take hundreds of pictures while the children opened their presents. Then they would all get dressed in their best clothes and drive to Rebecca's mother's house for Christmas dinner with the whole family. But this year felt different somehow. Emma noticed it first. Her parents seemed to smile less when they thought no one was looking. She heard them talking in quiet, angry voices behind their bedroom door late at night. When Emma asked her mother if everything was okay, Rebecca would just smile and say that adults sometimes had things to worry about, but everything was fine. Tyler saw it too. His father, who usually loved to play basketball with him in their driveway, seemed tired and distracted. When Tyler asked his dad to shoot hoops with him, Michael would say he was too busy with work. Tyler started spending more time at his friends' house after school because home didn't feel as happy as it used to. Even little Sophie could sense that something was wrong. Her parents used to read her bedtime stories together, taking turns doing different voices for all the characters. But lately, only one parent would come to her room at night and they seemed to be in a hurry to finish the story and turn off the light. The neighbors on Maple Street had no idea that anything was wrong with the Henderson family. Mrs. Johnson, who lived next door, often told people how lucky she was to live beside such a wonderful family. She would see Rebecca working in her garden and always looking so put together. She would wave to Michael as he left for work each morning in his expensive car. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, who lived across the street, thought the Hendersons were the kind of family everyone should try to be like. They had watched Emma, Tyler, and Sophie grow up, and they always seemed like such good, well-behaved children. The Davis family had been invited to several of the Hendersons' holiday parties over the years, and they were always impressed by how organized and beautiful everything was. But behind the perfect Christmas decorations and the beautiful house, things were not as good as they seemed. Michael's insurance business was in serious trouble. A big client had sued his company earlier that year, and Michael was struggling to pay all his bills. He had not told Rebecca how bad things really were, because he didn't want her to worry. Rebecca had her own secrets too. She had been feeling trapped and unhappy for months. Being at home all day with no job of her own made her feel like she had lost herself. She missed teaching and having her own money to spend. She also missed feeling important and needed by other people besides her family. The stress of these hidden problems was starting to show in small ways. Michael had started drinking more wine with dinner. Rebecca had been taking sleeping pills to help her fall asleep at night. Both of them were shorter-tempered with their children and with each other. Emma's best friend Sarah had started to notice that Emma didn't seem as happy as she used to be. When Sarah asked Emma if everything was okay at home, Emma would just shrug and change the subject, but Sarah could tell that Emma was worried about something. Tyler's basketball coach noticed that Tyler seemed distracted during practice. The boy who used to be one of the most focused players on the team was now missing easy shots and forgetting plays they had practiced dozens of times. Sophie's teacher, Mrs. Peterson, had called Rebecca a few weeks before Christmas because Sophie had been acting differently at school. The little girl who used to be cheerful and talkative had become quiet and seemed sad sometimes. When Mrs. Peterson asked Sophie if everything was all right, Sophie just nodded and said she was fine. As Christmas Eve morning arrived, the Henderson family prepared for their usual traditions. But this year, the smiles felt forced, and the laughter sounded hollow. None of them knew that this would be their last Christmas together, and that by Christmas morning, their perfect family would be gone forever. 6 months before Christmas Eve, the Henderson family's problems began to grow like weeds in a garden. Michael Henderson sat in his office on a hot June morning, staring at a stack of bills he could not pay. His insurance company was losing money, fast, and he was running out of ways to fix it. The lawsuit from his biggest client had cost him almost everything. The client claimed that Michael had sold them a bad insurance policy that did not cover their warehouse fire. Now Michael had to pay them back hundreds of thousands of dollars that he did not have. Every day more bills came in the mail, and every day Michael felt more trapped. Michael had always been good with money. He grew up in a poor family and promised himself he would never be broke again. But now, for the first time in his adult life, he was scared about money. He started taking money from their savings account to pay the bills. When that was gone, he took money from their children's college funds. When that was not enough, he got a loan against their house without telling Rebecca. Rebecca Henderson had no idea how bad their money problems were. Michael told her that business was slow, but things would get better soon. She believed him because Michael had always taken care of everything. Rebecca spent her days shopping, planning parties, and taking care of their beautiful home. She never looked at the bank accounts or asked questions about money. But Rebecca had her own secret that she was hiding from Michael. 3 months earlier, in April, she had joined a gym to try to feel better about herself. That was where she met Jake Morrison, a personal trainer who was 29 years old with dark hair and muscles from working out every day. At first, Jake was just Rebecca's trainer. He helped her exercise and told her she looked great. Rebecca had not felt attractive or interesting in a long time. Being a stay-at-home mom made her feel invisible sometimes. When Jake paid attention to her and made her laugh, it felt wonderful. After a few weeks, Jake asked Rebecca to have coffee with him after her workout. She said yes, telling herself it was just friendly. But sitting in the coffee shop with Jake, talking about her dreams and feelings, Rebecca felt alive again for the first time in years. Soon, Rebecca was meeting Jake for coffee 2 or 3 times a week. She would tell Michael she was shopping or meeting friends. Jake made Rebecca feel young and exciting again. He listened to her talk about wanting to go back to teaching or maybe travel to Europe someday. Michael never seemed to have time to listen to her dreams anymore. By July, Rebecca and Jake were meeting at his apartment when she was supposed to be at the gym. Rebecca felt guilty about lying to Michael and the children, but she also felt happier than she had in years. Jake made her feel special and beautiful. He told her she deserved better than being stuck at home all day. The children began to notice changes in both their parents, but they did not understand what was happening. Emma saw that her mother seemed happier and was gone from home more often. When Emma asked where her mother was going, Rebecca would say she was running errands or meeting friends for lunch. Tyler noticed that his father seemed worried and tired all the time. Michael used to help Tyler with his homework and play games with him in the evenings. But now Michael was always in his home office with the door closed, making phone calls or working on his computer late into the night. Little Sophie just knew that something felt different in their house. Her parents were not fighting exactly, but they were not talking to each other as much as they used to. At dinner, everyone would eat quietly while looking at their phones instead of talking about their day. In August, things got worse. Michael discovered that one of his business partners had been stealing money from their company. This meant that Michael owed even more money than he thought. He was now hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and he could not see any way to fix it. That same month, Rebecca realized she was falling in love with Jake. When she was with him, she forgot about all her responsibilities at home. Jake talked about them running away together and starting a new life somewhere else. The idea seemed impossible, but it also seemed wonderful. By September, Michael was drinking more than usual. He would come home from work and pour himself a big glass of wine before dinner. Then he would have another glass and sometimes another. Rebecca noticed but did not say anything because she was dealing with her own guilty feelings about Jake. In October, Rebecca began thinking seriously about leaving Michael. She imagined taking the children and moving somewhere far away with Jake, but she knew Michael would never let her take Emma, Tyler, and Sophie away from him. The thought of losing her children made her feel sick to her stomach. Michael was having his own dark thoughts. He had started going to the casino on weekends, hoping to win enough money to pay off his debts. Instead, he lost even more money. Some nights he would lie awake thinking about how much easier everything would be if he could just disappear. Emma started staying at her friend Sarah's house more often on weekends. She told her parents she was working on school projects, but really she just wanted to get away from the tension at home. Emma could feel that something was very wrong, even though no one would tell her what it was. Tyler began having trouble sleeping. He would lie in bed listening to his parents talk in angry whispers in their room next door. He could not hear what they were saying, but he could tell they were upset about something serious. Sophie started having nightmares and would wake up crying. Rebecca or Michael would come to comfort her, but Sophie could not explain what she was scared of. She just knew that she felt afraid sometimes, even during the day. By November, both Michael and Rebecca were living double lives. Michael was hiding their money problems and his gambling. Rebecca was hiding her relationship with Jake and her thoughts about leaving. Both of them were pretending that everything was normal for the sake of their children. Neither of them knew how much longer they could keep pretending. The weight of their secrets was crushing them both, and Christmas was getting closer every day. December 23, 2019 began with Michael Henderson discovering something that would change everything. He woke up early and went to check their mailbox, hoping there would be no more bills. Instead, he found their credit card statement from the previous month. Michael sat at his kitchen table and opened the envelope with shaking hands. As he looked at the charges, his heart started beating faster. There were payments to a gym he had never been to, expensive dinners at restaurants he had never visited, and hotel bills that made no sense. The name Jake Morrison appeared on several charges. Michael had never heard this name before, but he could see that his wife had been spending hundreds of dollars on this person. The hotel charge from last week made Michael feel sick to his stomach. He knew exactly what it meant. When Rebecca came downstairs wearing her workout clothes, she saw Michael sitting at the table with papers spread out in front of him. She could tell from the look on his face that something was very wrong. Michael held up the credit card statement and asked her to explain the charges. Rebecca tried to act like she did not know what he was talking about. She said maybe someone had stolen their credit card number and was using it. But Michael pointed to each charge and asked her to explain them one by one. When he got to the hotel charge, Rebecca could not lie anymore. She told Michael that Jake Morrison was her personal trainer at the gym. She said they had become friends, and sometimes they would have coffee together after her workouts. Michael asked about the hotel charge, and Rebecca looked away. She said it had only happened once and it meant nothing. But Michael knew his wife was lying. He could see it in her eyes and hear it in her voice. This was not just one mistake. Rebecca had been having an affair for months, and she had been using their money to do it. Money they did not have. Michael felt like his whole world was falling apart. His business was failing. They were about to lose their house, and now he discovered that his wife was cheating on him with another man. He asked Rebecca if she loved this Jake person, and when she did not answer right away, he knew the truth. Rebecca finally admitted that she had feelings for Jake. She said she was unhappy in their marriage and had been for a long time. She told Michael that Jake made her feel young and exciting again. She said she wanted a divorce so she could be with Jake and start a new life. Michael laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. He told Rebecca that they could not afford a divorce. He explained that they had no money left. Their house was about to be taken by the bank and their children's college funds were gone. He had been hiding their financial problems from her, just like she had been hiding her affair from him. Rebecca was shocked to learn how bad their money situation really was. She had been living in their beautiful house, shopping whenever she wanted, and planning their perfect family life, not knowing that it was all about to disappear. The two of them sat at their kitchen table and had the worst fight of their 20-year marriage. Michael called Rebecca selfish and said she had destroyed their family. Rebecca called Michael a failure and said it was his fault they were in this mess. They said terrible things to each other that they had never said before. After their fight, Michael got in his car and drove to the gym where Jake worked. He wanted to see the man who was stealing his wife and destroying his family. When Michael walked into the gym, he saw Jake right away. The man was everything Michael was not: young, strong, and confident. Michael walked up to Jake and told him to stay away from his wife and his family. Jake was not afraid of Michael. He said that Rebecca was an adult who could make her own choices. Jake told Michael that Rebecca had told him all about their problems at home, and that she deserved to be happy. The conversation between the two men became very heated. Other people in the gym stopped their workouts to watch. Jake told Michael that Rebecca was planning to leave him anyway, so he should just accept it and move on. Michael wanted to hit Jake, but the gym manager came over and asked Michael to leave before there was any trouble. When Michael got home, Rebecca was not there. She had gone to Jake's apartment to tell him that Michael knew about their relationship. Jake was upset that their secret was out, but he told Rebecca that maybe it was for the best. Now they could be together without hiding. But when Rebecca explained how much debt Michael had hidden from her, Jake became quiet. He had thought that Rebecca was a wealthy woman who could help him start his own business. Learning that she was actually married to a man who was about to lose everything changed how Jake felt about their future together. That night, Michael and Rebecca had to pretend everything was normal when their children came home from school. Emma, Tyler, and Sophie could tell that their parents were upset about something, but they did not know what had happened. After dinner, when the children were doing their homework, Michael and Rebecca continued their argument in their bedroom. Rebecca said she was going to file for divorce right after Christmas. Michael said he would not let her take their children away from him. Rebecca felt trapped. If she stayed with Michael, she would be miserable for the rest of her life. But if she left him, their divorce would be ugly and expensive. Everyone in town would know about their financial problems and her affair. Their children would be embarrassed at school and would have to leave their friends behind. Michael felt just as trapped as Rebecca. He had worked his whole life to build a successful business and give his family a good life. Now everything was falling apart, and there seemed to be no way to fix it. He thought about running away and starting over somewhere else, but he could not leave his children. As December 23rd came to an end, both Michael and Rebecca were thinking desperate thoughts. They were both angry, scared, and feeling like they had no good choices left. Neither of them was thinking clearly anymore. The stress of their situation was making them both consider options that they never would have thought about before. They were no longer trying to save their marriage or find a way to work through their problems. Instead, they were both thinking about ways to escape from their situation completely. Christmas Eve was tomorrow, and neither of them knew that their desperate thoughts would soon turn into the most terrible plan imaginable. December 24th, 2019 started like any other Christmas Eve morning in the Henderson house. The children woke up excited about opening their presents the next day. Emma helped little Sophie pick out her dress for church. Tyler was looking forward to playing with his new video games. None of them knew that this would be their last Christmas Eve together. Michael Henderson woke up with a terrible headache and a heavy feeling in his chest. He had barely slept all night, thinking about his fight with Rebecca and their hopeless situation. When he looked in the bathroom mirror, he saw a man who looked 10 years older than he had just 1 week ago. Rebecca had not slept well either. She kept thinking about her conversation with Jake the night before. When she told Jake about their money problems, he had become distant and cold. Jake said he needed time to think about their relationship. Rebecca realized that Jake might not want to be with her if she could not give him the comfortable life he expected. At breakfast, the family sat around their kitchen table eating pancakes like they did every Christmas Eve. But the mood was different this year. Michael stared at his coffee cup and barely spoke. Rebecca kept looking at her phone, hoping Jake would text her back. The children tried to make conversation, but their parents seemed far away. Emma noticed that her mother's eyes were red like she had been crying. When Emma asked if everything was okay, Rebecca forced a smile and said she was just tired. Tyler saw that his father looked angry and sad at the same time. When Tyler asked his dad if they could play basketball later, Michael just nodded without really listening. Little Sophie was the most excited about Christmas, but even she could tell that something was wrong. Her parents were not laughing or singing Christmas songs like they usually did. When Sophie asked if Santa would still come to their house, Rebecca hugged her tight and said of course he would. After breakfast, the family got dressed and went to church for the Christmas Eve service. They sat in their usual pew near the front, looking like the perfect family they had always appeared to be. But inside, both Michael and Rebecca were struggling with dark thoughts. During the church service, the pastor talked about forgiveness and second chances. He said that even when life seems hopeless, there is always a way to start over. Michael listened to these words, but they only made him feel worse. He did not see any way to start over with so much debt and a broken marriage. Rebecca sat next to Michael during the service, but she felt like they were strangers. She kept thinking about Jake and wondering if he would ever call her back. She also thought about their children and how a divorce would change their lives forever. The idea of splitting up their family made her feel sick, but staying together seemed impossible too. After church, the family came home and tried to continue their Christmas Eve traditions. Michael set up the nativity scene on the fireplace mantel, while Rebecca made hot chocolate. The children helped decorate cookies and wrap last-minute presents. But everyone could feel the tension in the air. In the afternoon, they drove around town to look at Christmas lights like they did every year. Emma, Tyler, and Sophie pointed out their favorite decorations and talked about which houses looked the most beautiful. Michael drove slowly through the neighborhoods while Rebecca sat quietly in the passenger seat. As they looked at all the happy families in their decorated houses, both Michael and Rebecca felt envious. These other families seemed to have everything they had lost: love, security, and hope for the future. Michael wondered how many of these perfect-looking families were hiding problems like theirs. When they got home, Rebecca said she had a headache and went to lie down in their bedroom. Michael told the children he needed to make some work calls and went into his home office. Emma, Tyler, and Sophie were left to entertain themselves, which was unusual for Christmas Eve. Around 6 o'clock, Michael came out of his office and found Rebecca in the kitchen making dinner. They looked at each other without speaking, both knowing that they needed to talk but not wanting to fight in front of the children again. During dinner, the family ate mostly in silence. The children tried to start conversations about Christmas, morning, and their plans for the next day, but their parents gave short answers and seemed distracted. Sophie asked if they could watch Christmas movies together after dinner, and Rebecca said maybe later. After dinner, the children were allowed to open one present each, like they did every Christmas Eve. Emma opened a new sweater that she loved. Tyler got a basketball that he had been wanting. Sophie opened a book about princesses that made her smile for the first time all day. As the evening went on, Michael and Rebecca both became more and more anxious. They knew they could not keep pretending that everything was normal. Their children deserved to know what was happening to their family, but neither parent wanted to ruin Christmas Eve with bad news. Around 9 o'clock, Michael told the children it was time to get ready for bed so Santa could come. Emma rolled her eyes because she was too old to believe in Santa, but she helped Sophie get into her pajamas anyway. Tyler brushed his teeth and went to his room to read for a while before going to sleep. Little Sophie was too excited about Christmas morning to fall asleep right away. Rebecca sat on her bed and read her a Christmas story, trying to keep her voice steady and cheerful. Sophie asked her mother why she looked so sad, and Rebecca said she was just tired from all the Christmas preparations. After all three children were in their beds, Michael and Rebecca found themselves alone in their living room. The Christmas tree lights twinkled in the corner, and everything looked peaceful and beautiful. But both of them felt like their world was ending. They sat on opposite ends of their couch without speaking for a long time. Finally, Michael broke the silence and said they needed to make a decision about their future. Rebecca nodded, knowing that this conversation would change everything. Neither of them could imagine how this Christmas Eve would end, or how the decision they were about to make would destroy not just their own lives but the lives of their three innocent children who were sleeping peacefully upstairs. At 11:52 p.m. on Christmas Eve, police officers arrived at the Henderson house on Maple Street. The Christmas lights were still twinkling on the roof, but something terrible had happened inside the beautiful home that had once been filled with laughter and love. Officer James Miller was the first to reach the front door. He had been a police officer for 15 years, but he was not prepared for what he would find inside the Henderson house. The front door was unlocked, which seemed strange for a family that usually kept their home secure. Officer Miller called out as he entered the house, but no one answered. The living room looked normal, with wrapped Christmas presents still sitting under the tree. But there was an eerie silence that made the officer feel uneasy as he moved through the house. Detective Sarah Walsh arrived a few minutes later with the rest of the investigation team. Detective Walsh had worked on many difficult cases during her 20-year career, but family violence cases always affected her the most, especially when children were involved. The first body the officers found was little Sophie in her bedroom. The 8-year-old girl was lying in her bed wearing her favorite princess pajamas. She looked like she was sleeping peacefully, but Detective Walsh could see right away that Sophie had been shot. There was no sign that the little girl had struggled or even woken up. Tyler was found in his bedroom across the hall. The 14-year-old boy was also in his bed, and like his little sister, he appeared to have been killed while he was sleeping. The basketball he had gotten for Christmas was still sitting on his desk where he had left it before going to bed. Emma was discovered in her room at the end of the hallway. The 16-year-old girl was lying on her side in her bed, and she too had been shot while she slept. Her diary was open on her nightstand, with the last entry dated December 23rd. In it, she had written about hoping that whatever was wrong between her parents would get better after Christmas. Michael Henderson was found in the master bedroom, dead from a gunshot wound to the head. He was lying on the floor next to the bed, and there was a gun nearby. At first, it looked like Michael had killed his family and then shot himself. But Rebecca Henderson was still alive, barely. She was found in the kitchen, unconscious and bleeding, from a gunshot wound to her head. The bullet had not killed her instantly like it was supposed to. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital where doctors worked to save her life. Detective Walsh began investigating the scene immediately. Something about the situation did not feel right to her. If Michael had killed his family and then himself, why was Rebecca found in a different room? And why was she still alive if she was supposed to be dead too? The investigation team took hundreds of photographs and collected evidence from every room in the house. They found the gun that had been used to kill the family. It was registered to Michael Henderson, and it had been legally purchased 3 years earlier for home protection. When the crime scene technicians tested the gun for fingerprints, they found something interesting. Both Michael and Rebecca's fingerprints were on the weapon. This meant that both parents had handled the gun that night, not just Michael. The team also found Rebecca's cell phone, which contained text messages that told a disturbing story. There were messages between Rebecca and Jake Morrison that showed Rebecca had been having an affair. But more importantly, there were messages between Rebecca and Michael from December 24th that showed they had been planning something together. One text message from Rebecca to Michael said, "Are you sure this is the only way?" Michael had replied, We can't let them suffer through what's coming. This is better for everyone. Another message from Michael to Rebecca said, "I'll go first, then you do what we talked about." Rebecca had replied, "I love you even after everything. See you on the other side." These text messages made Detective Walsh realize that this was not a case of one parent killing the family. This was a murder-suicide pact between both parents. They had planned to kill their children and themselves, together. Rebecca survived for 3 weeks in the hospital before she was strong enough to talk to the police. When Detective Walsh interviewed her, Rebecca claimed that she could not remember what happened that night. She said the last thing she remembered was putting Sophie to bed and reading her a Christmas story. But the evidence told a different story. Phone records showed that Rebecca and Michael had made several calls to each other on December 24th, planning their terrible crime. Rebecca's internet search history from the days before Christmas showed that she had been looking up information about quick and painless ways to die. Bank records revealed the full extent of the Henderson family's financial problems. They owed more than $500,000 and were about to lose their house. Michael's business was bankrupt, and there was no way for them to pay their debts. Detective Walsh also discovered that both parents had taken out large life insurance policies on themselves and their children just 6 months before the murders. If the deaths had looked like an accident or a random crime, Rebecca would have received millions of dollars in insurance money. During her interviews with the police, Rebecca's story kept changing. First, she said Michael must have killed the family while she was unconscious. Then she said she might have tried to stop him and that was why she was shot. But none of her stories matched the evidence. The investigation revealed that Rebecca and Michael had spent hours on December 24th discussing their plan. They believed that killing their children would save them from the shame and poverty that would come when their family's problems became public. In their twisted thinking, they thought death was better than the difficult life their children would face. Jake Morrison, Rebecca's lover, was also interviewed by the police. He told Detective Walsh that Rebecca had been talking strangely in the weeks before Christmas. She had asked him hypothetical questions about starting over completely, with no connections to the past. Jake said he thought Rebecca was just talking about divorce, not murder. The case shocked the entire community of Phoenix. The Henderson family had seemed so perfect from the outside. No one could understand how two parents who claimed to love their children could do something so terrible. 6 months after the murders, Rebecca Henderson was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecutor argued that even though Michael was dead, Rebecca was equally responsible for planning and carrying out the crime. The case would become one of the most talked-about murder trials in Arizona history, as the community struggled to understand how a family's Christmas Eve could turn into such a nightmare. 18 months after that terrible Christmas Eve, Rebecca Henderson sat in a courtroom wearing an orange jail uniform. The woman who had once been known for her beautiful clothes and perfect appearance now looked thin and tired. Her blonde hair had grown out, showing gray roots, and her face looked years older than her 40 years. The trial began on a hot Monday morning in June 2021. The courtroom was packed with reporters, neighbors, and family members who wanted to see justice for Emma, Tyler, and Sophie Henderson. Many people in Phoenix had followed the case closely, trying to understand how a mother could kill her own children. Judge Patricia Martinez presided over the trial. She was a serious woman who had handled many difficult cases during her 15 years as a judge. But even Judge Martinez found this case particularly disturbing because it involved the murder of 3 innocent children by their own parents. The prosecutor was District Attorney Robert Chen, a man who had put many criminals in prison during his career. Chen told the jury that Rebecca Henderson was equally guilty of murdering her family, even though her husband Michael had pulled the trigger. Chen argued that the murders were planned by both parents together. Rebecca's defense attorney was a woman named Linda Rodriguez, who specialized in defending people accused of serious crimes. Rodriguez argued that Rebecca was a victim of domestic abuse who had been forced to participate in Michael's plan to kill their family. She claimed that Michael had threatened to kill the children himself if Rebecca did not help him. During the first week of the trial, the prosecutor presented evidence about the Henderson family's financial problems. An accountant testified that The family owed more than $500,000 and was about to lose their house. Several banks had begun foreclosure proceedings, and Michael's business was completely bankrupt. The prosecutor also presented evidence about Rebecca's affair with Jake Morrison. Phone records showed hundreds of text messages between Rebecca and Jake in the months before the murders. Some of these messages talked about running away together and starting a new life. Jake Morrison testified during the second week of the trial. He was nervous and uncomfortable as he answered questions about his relationship with Rebecca. Jake told the jury that Rebecca had seemed desperate and unhappy in the weeks before Christmas. He said she had asked him strange questions about what it would be like to start over with no connections to the past. The most damaging evidence against Rebecca came from her own text messages with Michael on December 24th. The prosecutor read these messages aloud to the jury, showing that both parents had planned the murders together. The messages clearly showed that Rebecca knew what was going to happen and had agreed to participate. Detective Sarah Walsh testified about the crime scene investigation. She explained how the physical evidence showed that both parents had handled the murder weapon. She also described finding the children in their beds, each killed while they slept peacefully. The defense attorney tried to argue that Rebecca had been coerced by Michael. Linda Rodriguez presented evidence about the couple's troubled marriage and suggested that Michael had been controlling and abusive. She claimed that Rebecca was too scared of Michael to refuse to participate in his plan. Rebecca's sister Lisa testified on her behalf, describing Rebecca as a loving mother who would never hurt her children voluntarily. Lisa cried as she told the jury about the sister she had grown up with, saying that Rebecca had always been gentle and kind. Lisa argued that something terrible must have happened to change Rebecca so dramatically. But the prosecution had a strong response to the defense's arguments. District Attorney Chen presented evidence showing that Rebecca had researched family murder cases online in the weeks before Christmas. Her internet search history showed visits to websites about murder-suicide cases and articles about life insurance payouts. The prosecution also revealed that both parents had increased their life insurance policies just 6 months before the murders. If the deaths had appeared to be the result of a random crime, Rebecca would have received millions of dollars in insurance money. During the third week of the trial, Rebecca finally took the witness stand to testify in her own defense. She claimed that she could not remember most of what happened on Christmas Eve because she was in shock and trauma. Rebecca said she loved her children more than anything and would never have hurt them if she had been thinking clearly. But under cross-examination by the prosecutor, Rebecca's story fell apart. Chen pointed out the inconsistencies in her various statements to police. He showed the jury her text messages that proved she had been planning the murders with Michael for days before Christmas Eve. The prosecutor asked Rebecca to explain why she had been researching murder-suicide cases online if she had not been planning to kill her family. Rebecca could not give a good answer. Chen also asked her to explain her internet searches about life insurance payouts, and again Rebecca had no reasonable explanation. One of the most emotional moments of the trial came when the prosecutor read excerpts from Emma's diary. The 16-year-old girl had written about her worries regarding her parents' marriage, but also about her hopes for Christmas and her dreams of becoming an actress. Emma had written that she hoped her family's problems would get better after the holidays. The jury deliberated for 3 days before reaching their verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, the foreman announced that they had found Rebecca Henderson guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree murder. Several family members in the courtroom began crying when they heard the verdict. Before sentencing Rebecca, Judge Martinez allowed family members to make victim impact statements. Lisa spoke about how the murders had destroyed not just Rebecca's immediate family, but also all the grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins who had loved Emma, Tyler, and Sophie. Michael's brother David told the court that he would never understand how his brother could have killed his own children. David said that while Michael had made terrible mistakes, the children should have been protected, not murdered. Judge Martinez sentenced Rebecca Henderson to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In her sentencing statement, the judge said that Rebecca had betrayed the most fundamental trust between a parent and child. Judge Martinez said that while she understood Rebecca had been under tremendous stress, Nothing could justify the murder of 3 innocent children. As Rebecca was led away in handcuffs, she looked back at her sister Lisa one last time. Lisa was crying and shaking her head, unable to understand how the sister she had grown up with had become capable of such a terrible crime. The Henderson house on Maple Street remained empty for over a year after the murders. No one wanted to live in the place where such a horrible crime had occurred. Eventually, the bank sold the house to developers who tore it down and built a small park in its place. Emma, Tyler, and Sophie Henderson are buried in a cemetery outside Phoenix, their graves visited regularly by extended family members who still struggle to understand what happened to them. Their headstones simply read, "Beloved children," and show their birth dates and the shared date of their death, December 24th, 2019. The case became a reminder to the Phoenix community that even families who seem perfect on the outside can be hiding terrible problems. Mental health professionals used the Henderson case to educate people about the warning signs of family violence and the importance of seeking help when financial or marital problems become overwhelming. Rebecca Henderson remains in prison today, serving her life sentence. She has never fully admitted her responsibility for the murders, continuing to claim that she cannot remember the details of that Christmas Eve. But the evidence presented at her trial left no doubt about her guilt in the deaths of her 3 children and husband. The tragedy of the Henderson family serves as a dark reminder that Christmas Eve 2019 became not a celebration of love and hope, but the night when a family destroyed itself from within.